Hi, everyone. It's me, Kristie Clayton, with ConvHERsations with Kristie. I'm so incredibly excited to have Melissa Ortiz on the episode today, where we're going to talk about right people, right seat, and who knows where we will go. Just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I am Kristie Clayton. I am the visionary and founder of First. HER is an acronym for us that stands for Helping Executives Rise. And we do that in three ways. First, we have a community that is built for second in command leaders. I'm super excited about that group. That group was formerly known as FEM, Female Integrator Mastermind, and is now Female Executive Mastermind. We also have a second group, a community for women who report to that second in command leader. So they are typically on the leadership team. They may or may not have direct reports, but they own their department. And that is our Lead Her community. And then the third way that we are helping executives rise is through executive coaching. And we have coaching available for visionaries, integrators, and leadership teams. So we are really excited about what we're doing. And Melissa, I get super excited about what you're doing. So do you want to share who you are and a little bit about what you do?
I would love to. I'm so glad to be here and so grateful for all that you do for the broader community. You're just on fire and I love cheering you on. So my name is Melissa Ortiz. I've been working in talent optimization for the last 17 years. And I still get so excited about the idea of getting the right people in the right seats, make sure that they're engaged and thriving. And I was musing this morning about our conversation, and it kind of came to me in the last couple of days that so much of our audience is in the EOS space, not all, but so much of it. And one of the pitches about EOS is they help business leaders get what they want out of their businesses. And I was realizing there's kind of a corollary. I help business owners get what they want out of their people, and conversely help people get what they want out of their jobs, because it's not a one-way street. It's the reason I love this talent optimization space is because it is mutually beneficial. When I'm the right person in the right seat, I have more energy to take home to my family, for my physical well-being, for my faith, whatever's important to me. There's gas left in the tank at the end of the day. And I think that's the critical aspect of right person, right seats, even outside of the business productivity, profitability reasons.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Well, I love your world because I think when something that most second in command leaders, integrators, or any other title that a second in command could have, I think one of the things that I hear a lot is we are truly passionate about growing and developing our team, right? And there are great ways to do that. And I'd love for you just to kind of talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you help people with that talent optimization?
If we're going to develop people, we have to know the people. It's not a broad brush, one size fits all. You have to get the quirkiness that is each human on your team. And I think that's what makes the world so fascinating to me. I mean, you would laugh because I probably had taken 20 different assessments in my life. I was finishing my master's degree at Texas A&M in business, and I took the StrengthsFinder. And I was like, this is so different. No one has ever told me in any assessment, in any conversation, that these talents that I have, activator is my number one strength in the StrengthsFinder language, and number two is command. But the only thing I'd ever heard in my life was that I was impatient and bossy. And those were shameful things that I should hide from the world because they were bad. And when I found the StrengthsFinder, it opened this entirely different door to my development and helped me understand I could use those things for good instead of evil. And I think that's where it has to begin. As we're developing people, we have to get who they are. And I'm a little agnostic when it comes to assessments. I mean, I love Predictive Index. I love the pre-hire power, the efficiency, because it takes 5 minutes. I love StrengthsFinder because of the depth and richness of the language. But I don't care what you use. Find something you like and understand your team, understand the dynamics of how those overlay. I get so many clients who tell me that the one thing I tell them that resonates is this idea that stars have sharp points, and they should, and teams can be well-rounded. We can fill each other's gaps in. And so we have to understand who the stars on our team are, not just from performance, but what their quirkiness is, how to use that to our benefit and theirs and our clients' benefits, and then how to overlay that with the people that are different. And there's just a never ending stream of context and options and ideas there. And So I think it all has to take its foundation there. And then as we accept that those are different, then we have to take into account they have different aspirations. So as we align all those things, and then there's the basics of, how do they fit into the accountability chart, and how what needs of theirs are not being met, so we can unlock the next level of performance. And with those things in hand, it's kind of a recipe for awesomeness.
I love that. Awesomeness. That's what we're looking for, right? Well, and one of the things that we talked about last week in our conversation with John Glon, who does Working Genius, is you're so right with the stars and how we fill each other's gaps. Because if you have a team that are all exactly the same, who's helping counterbalance?
Each other crazy is what we're going to do. We're going to be stepping all over each other. Everyone's going to want to drive or be in the navigator seat. It's just not helpful, and it doesn't let anyone shine, right? Because there are still roles that have to be filled in. And that's where early in my career, when I was at Gallup, I had people that are like, oh, we love the StrengthsFinder. We just hire every woo we can find to be on our sales team because they're great at winning others over. I'm like, and guess what? They kind of just like to hang out and have fun with their clients rather than move them to close, don't they? Well, yeah, that has been a problem.
Yeah. So it's really important to have a well-balanced team. And then not everybody really kind of is exactly the same, because you're right. Like, we talk about this as kind of jokingly, that in the whole world, like if everybody was exactly the same as you, what a boring world that would be. So, and it's so true, like in businesses too, if you have every single person that is the same, not only is it a boring world because everybody behaves exactly the same, but also productivity could be an issue.
And I think even more than that, even our more self-aware leaders out there, we know everyone's not the same. We get people are motivated differently. And yet our default is always to come back to believing, even without acknowledging it, that other people see the world the way we do. They think the way we do. They have the same sense of urgency we do, or don't, as the case may be, or the same process orientation.
Yeah.
And we are constant. I mean, I've been doing this for 17 years and I still remind myself, not everyone has the sense of urgency you do, Mel. Not everyone thinks we need to go now. I know that in my core, and yet I still remind myself almost on the daily that everyone's wired differently.
But that's so beautiful. I love what you just said, is that you've been doing it for this long and you still have to remind yourself, because, especially if somebody is newer to a leadership role, like one of the conversations I hear a lot is, I just said that, or that I'm having the same conversations over and over. So we think it's really validating to realize, wait a minute, a guru in this area still has to remind herself too.
And I still go back and read my assessment results every January. I just put them on my calendar and I remind myself, like, this is the core of what I'm dealing with. How does that overlay with my goals this year? And how am I going to align that for success? I mean, if we go back to everyone doesn't see the world the same way, I was working with an oil and gas leader a few months ago, and he said, I'm 55 years old and I'm embarrassed to admit to you that before we started using PI for pre-hire and employee development, I didn't actually know that people saw the world differently than I did. He goes, I'm so embarrassed to admit that, but it's the truth. I didn't know. And now that I know, it's like opened up this whole new world of employee development and support and employee retention. He said, I had a guy who was leaving me and I looked at his PI report for what are his needs and what would I need to do to keep him? How would I need to change his environment? He said, I went to him, I had my bullet points and I kept that guy. And it was the most rewarding experience. He'd been with me for 15 years. I didn't want to lose all of that knowledge of our clients and processes and teams. And I kept him because I had a superpower that I didn't have before. It's like, that's amazing way to use the resources at your disposal.
Yes. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. And here's why, because I think people, and again, I know we've talked about this several times. They take an assessment, they read over it and they're like, that's great. And then they move on. Right. And I'm like, no, like pause, like learn all that you can. And I know you're a huge proponent of Predictive Index, which is one of my top 3. I love Predictive Index. And nobody's ever surprised to hear me say that I'm a captain. But I think there are things like when you get that report and read it, Melissa, I don't know about you, but I've experienced this a couple of times where people will read through the good things and they're like, okay. And then they get to the section of like, what do you need to improve? Like where areas that you need to be like just conscious and aware. And they read through that and they just like self-diagnose that they're a horrible person. And so how do you work
and then they dismiss all the good stuff, right? It just, all the good stuff goes away. And they're like, you're right. I knew that I was terrible at this. I knew I was impatient.
So how do you work through that? If you were sitting across the street, treat me as if I'm a leadership team member who knows nothing. How would you work through that with a leadership team member who is maybe like trying to, build a team, lots of energy, lots of great, right people, right seed, all of the things that we know we need to do, but they have that person who's sitting in front of them. How would you coach them how to have a productive conversation with that team member who's like, look at all these horrible things about myself?
So I think when it comes to talent in general, it doesn't matter what assessment you use. There is the force and the dark side. And it isn't the strengths are the things we have and the weaknesses are the things we don't have. Usually our biggest weaknesses are embedded in our talents. They're not embedded in the things we haven't developed. It's my ability to turn ideas into action is my superpower. My impatience is the dark side of that. And the way that I go about distributing that is I just work on 40 things at once. So my impatience gets spread really thin. And nobody on the other side of that project has to feel all the things that I have to offer. And so I think as leaders, the position that we're in is to help them see the light within them. Like, yes, sometimes you're impatient. When we're under the gun with a tight timeline, yeah, you better believe it. And you do realize that's the reason we stayed till midnight to finish that RFP, because you had so much energy around it that we all went, you're right, we've got to do this. It's got to be done before the morning. We're not coming in early. We're knocking it out tonight. By God, we're going to open a bottle of champagne while we're here. And I think what we don't do well in our society, we suck at receiving compliments. We suck at receiving the other end of, I've seen that in Patience at Play, and here's how it works to our benefit. We suck at giving compliments that are specific enough. It's rather than good job today, it's that impact you made with that irate customer was masterful. The way you did XYZ, wow, keep it up. Everyone needs to see this. This needs to be our, the thing in our playbook builder. I wish I had kept it on video, because those are the things people need to hear. We need to give specific feedback that's timely. We need to receive it as the gift that it is, because what we tend to do with our talents, just like we assume that people see the world the way that we do, we assume that people get things the way we do. So whether it's handling an irate customer, turning ideas into action, we're like, yeah, everyone does that. Everyone doesn't do that. It's a talent. And the more talent-based compliments we give, the more people can shine. And especially if they can receive them. I'll give you the stupidest example. My brother is great at photography. He loves to travel. He loves to take these two and weave them together. He comes home from trips and he makes these elaborate slideshows with music, and they're beautiful. And one day I said, Mitchell, these are amazing. They're so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And he totally dismissed the compliment. I grabbed him by the shoulders and I said, you have a talent. It is fantastic. I hope you do more photography and more bringing this all together. And he kind of sat back and was like, thank you. And it was so awkward for him, because we don't receive compliments well. And,
yes.
They can set us on totally different career paths. My first business, my first entrepreneurial venture was the result of one compliment. It was a professor at Cal Poly who called me into his office hours and he said, this business plan you did for my class, this is really good. You need to go start a business. I said, what do you mean? I'm graduating, I have a job. What do you mean? He goes, just go do it. Well, that's a really hard thing to say to me, because I will just go do it. And I entered a business plan competition through Wells Fargo. I earned $5,000 in seed money from that. And I started a line of meat marinades for wild game. Kristie, I don't cook and I don't hunt. Here I am with this line of meat marinades for wild game. And I'm like demoing them in Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops. And out of one compliment, I learned about a love of entrepreneurship. Never learned to love cooking or hunting.
That is so funny.
It's one compliment.
Uh-huh.
and do
But
magic.
isn't it so funny how we can going down a slightly different path here, like how our journeys can shift so dramatically with just one compliment. I don't think people understand the true power of their words. And I encourage leaders when I'm coaching them, like you have to be so incredibly intentional with what you're saying, because the person on the other side is going to receive those words. So are you saying what you really mean to say? Because it can go one of two ways, right? I mean, it can always, like, you're right. I can't tell you how many times people have shook me and said, Kristie, I just gave you a compliment. And I'm like, yeah. And you know what I would do, Melissa? I am horrible about this. It is a journey for me over the last few years, that when people would walk up to me and give me a compliment about them or about, this or that, it didn't matter what it was. I would always downplay it, right? Oh, I just blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait a minute, like,
Stop and say thank you. Just say
just say
thank you
you.
and take it as a gift that it is, because every compliment is this personalized, wrapped gift. And if you take it with care and you unpack it, and God forbid you ask a question, right? What made such an impact on you? Or what should we keep doing that you're really enjoying? Then it opens up this whole other world of the depth of this sincere compliment that that person has offered you. And then they really know you've received it. You've unpackaged it. You've admired the color and the texture. And if I could make one wish for the world, it would be that we'd all be better at giving and receiving compliments.
I could not agree more. And you know what? It is okay just to look the other person in the eye and say, thank you. That's all you have to do. You don't have to explain. You don't have to have it. You can just say thank you. That was a journey for me. Like I felt like I had to have, something to say back, or something, something to do, or like there had to be more. You can just say thank you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's so awesome. So I know we're a little off track, but it plays into all of it, right? Because it helps as leaders, it helps us get the right people into the right seats. It helps us develop people. The reason people are leaving jobs right now is not about money. Most of them are leaving for development opportunities. And guess what? We can just give those to them in our own house without a bunch of turnover. We can be, I think, at least I am a little more stingy with compliments than I should be, because I want people to know if I give you a compliment, I really mean it. It is coming from my soul, because I so appreciate you. And that's not an excuse for not doing it. But even if you have to go so far as putting it on your calendar to give someone recognition, or asking a question every time you meet one-on-one, hey, what are you learning? What do you want to learn next? How can I help? Little stuff like that, or the little pebbles along the development journey. And it's you were talking about the words that we use. It's also the way that we use our words. So much of what people hear isn't our words. It's the sincerity with which we're approaching that person. And you can say really hard things if all the intention is there, and they will feel that the way you meant it. And so when we don't appreciate people, they know that too. Yeah. So it's a little bit about finding something to appreciate about each person.
Yes. Because we all know and have received backhanded compliments before, right? Where it's like, I don't know that you really meant that. And that just makes it even worse, right? So I could not agree. And I'll tell you, one of the things I do, Melissa, is every morning I have 3 gratitudes that I list out in my morning routine, in part of my journal that I do, is who are 3 people that I am thankful for. And I actually list out their name and what I am thankful for. Like, what did they do? Very specific. And then I make sure that I either message them, mail them a card, or do something, send a quick video that just says, hey, you did this, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'll tell you what, I think the most amazing thing is, not only now does that person receive it, and they're sending gratitude back of, hey, thanks for saying that, but I feel so much better too, because I'm not holding that in. I'm expressing it and getting it out.
Yeah, it's such a joy booster. My life is filled with great things and great people. How lucky am I?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I know one of the things that you've been talking about with like right people, right seat is the idea of like developing a plan for them. Like, what does their future look like? Right. Because you're right. I think a lot of people are leaving because they just don't know what advancements that they can have within an organization. And then they see another opportunity somewhere else and they're like, well, that's going to advance me in the way that I'm looking to. So can you talk a little bit about that? How do you make sure you're keeping your people engaged, especially if you have a rock star on your hand?
So a couple things that come to mind when you say that. The disclaimer that I always share with leaders is one of the things we are so guilty of is we spend so much time with our C players who need remediation and nearly never enough time with our A players who have more to give than anyone else on the team. Maybe we don't ignore them. We high five them as they walk through the hall. We give them kudos for each win, but do we spend the effort developing them because they're in a good place? They don't need us. They need us. The A players on your team need the most development, the most encouragement because they are going to bring the most gains to your team.
Yes.
So that's the thing I like to make overtly clear with leaders that I expect them to be doing with their A players. And usually it's like, oh, you say that, I know that, and I'm not doing that. And it's just a helpful reminder, I find. The other thing I find is nobody's good at long range planning. Nobody knows where they really want to be, what their heart's desires are. They have yearnings, they have ideas, but so much of it is the little steps along the way, little bits of encouragement. What do you want to be able to do by the end of this year? Set milestones. And the other thing that I find is we have to be massively overt about, I expect you to own your own engagement. If you have an issue, I expect you to bring it up. I can't divine from you all the things that you need. So say something.
Mm-hmm.
If it's anything from, I need another monitor, I need a new keyboard, I need time with you that I'm simply not getting. I need more one-on-ones. They need to own their own engagement, and then they need to do the work in between. I can only do so much as a leader if you aren't doing the work to get yourself there. So especially we've gone from this place where people would stay in a job 20, 40 years. Now they're in 2 or 4 years. So who's that incumbent upon the responsibility? It's our employees. Yeah. If we keep them an extra year, that's a win for the organization. But I want them owning their own engagement in a little more intentional way.
Agree.
It's a little harsh, but it's true.
But it is true. It is very, very true because you're right. Like I'm not a mind reader, right? Like I can only help and develop in ways that, I know that you're looking for. So it's really important. Again, leaders, if you're sitting across the table from somebody, like have that direct conversation. What is it that they want? Where do they want to go? And see if it's something that you can accommodate, right? I think it's important. And it's important for us. And I think that the one other thing for me, Melissa, and I don't know about you, but like one big thing for me is, well, I guess 2 things. Number 1, I can't want it for them. Right. And I so many times do.
I do. I want it for them. I see the potential. I want them to level up and they have to want that too. And we have to accept that, especially like in the StrengthsFinder language, there's a talent called developer. And often that person will overinvest because they want to see that growth, but the person doesn't engage. And it's like you have to be comfortable going to where the desire is, where the energy is, and saying, I'll be here when you're ready. And that's okay if it's not now.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great, because the second thing for me is we also have to recognize that not everybody has the desire for the same career path, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I've heard a leadership team member or a manager say, well, we're looking to promote and, another manager. And I know this person would be really great, but that person is like, I don't have that desire. And that's okay, right? It's okay for them not to have that desire, but how do you build them and develop them and strengthen them in the role that they are super passionate about, and let them be their absolute best about it. And if and when they have desires to move into different directions, then you start that path too.
Yeah. And that hurdle to get to the manager role is such a hotly contested, hugely frustrating process for so many business owners because They need managers. We need people managers. We need coaches. We need trainers. We need supervisors. And sometimes, like we go back to the compliments, we see something in someone that they don't see in themselves. And so part of our job is to place those compliments in such a way like, hey, you realize you've trained our entire team, right? Because sometimes it's not that I don't want to be there. It's I have a fear of failure. And not everyone is self-promoting and self-aggrandizing. Some people are really humble and they don't want to fail. And so it's like, no, I actually think you would do a great job. And here's why. And I'm going to ask you again in 6 months. It's not time yet. But if we see that in someone, helping them see it in themselves and not taking our star performers and making them managers, right? That's textbook 101 way to fail.
Yes.
Take great individual contributors and ask them to go do that for other people because they're not ever going to be able to teach what they know because it's talent. And then you're taking that out of individual contributor roles where they're feeling a win and taking that away from them.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That is a golden nugget there, my friend. Not everybody. And listen, we hear it so many times, right? I mean, where especially we hear it a lot in sales, or at least that's where I hear it. They were an incredible salesperson. And so we promoted them to manager. And then we didn't develop them.
Most of the great sales managers were not great salespeople. They did just enough to get by. And that's kind of a shock to the system that you would want great salespeople reporting to mediocre salespeople. But mediocre salespeople get the process, they get to the discipline, they get how hard it is, and sometimes they're great people developers. They weren't great salespeople.
Exactly. I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. Like it's incredible. But that's the uniqueness, right? Is really finding everybody's talent, discovering that and discovering it with them, like you were talking about, and then developing it.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that not everybody wants the exact same career path that you had, right? Not every person has a desire to be a second in command leader. So, where do they want to be? Not where do you want them to be?
Ask them the question. Sometimes they don't know, and that's okay. So then you ask a smaller question. Okay, what do you want to learn next? What do you want to learn about? Who do you want to interact with? Who do you want to job shadow? And just keep nudging and encouraging. And even if they don't grow, they know when they're ready, you're ready too.
So, I
don't know.
That.
I think the other thing that we are really bad at as leaders is getting clear on what we want in the demands of the role and what type of person would thrive in that role. Because it's like this idea PI talks about head, heart, and briefcase. Your head are your cognitive and behavioral abilities that don't change. Your heart is that culture piece. And then your briefcase is your resume, your experience, your education. Doesn't change much, although maybe slowly over time. And we don't get as clear. I think we're better at getting clear on culture fit. Do we like this person? Do we want to hang out with them? Do they resonate the way that we do? But if we get the right person in the wrong seat, they think they are failures. And we're not getting any value out of it either, or maybe not enough. And so I think that's why PI is so fun for me, is it galvanizes and aligns leaders. Like I've got a 4-business group right now I'm working with. They need to hire a coalition coordinator. So they're trying to work together on a big project. This person is going to have 4 bosses and no employees. And I'm like, this is a critical role that we get it right in terms of what do you want? What kind of person will thrive in this role? And so gathering their feedback independently, agreeing, identifying areas of disagreement, getting something locked in will help lay the foundation for managing that person effectively. Because we often go in like, yeah, just hire a salesperson. Well, what does that mean for where we want to be as a business and how we want to show up in the marketplace? Our salesperson will change. You hire a textbook, enthusiastic go-getter.
Right. Well, and one more thing too, though, is Melissa, like just because you say you want a salesperson, because I hear this at the second in command level a lot, right? Well, I'm hiring an integrator. Okay, great. But that means something different at every company. So what does it mean for you and your company, right? There's kind of some foundational things of like what most integrators do, but there are different types of integrators. There are different types of salespeople. You just need to know what you're looking for in your organization and then attract the right person to it. But that does mean taking some time to really figure that out. And I think a lot of times business owners, founders, they don't know. They're just like, I need a salesperson. I need a second in command leader.
And I think even more to that, there's the nuance of if you're looking at that CEO or visionary, the finding the yin to their yang is so personal. It's not just about have they been a second in command. It's how will we fit together? Do they complement if, where my stars are pointy, are their stars shy, and we can make up for each other rather than competing with each other? Because you've got second in commands. I mean, I worked with one this week who's got a visionary profile. And I said, that's a really interesting thing. We need to make sure you've got the right visionary because you don't need to overlap and recreate the wheel. It's such a special relationship that is valuable to get right. The fallout when it doesn't, it's heartbreaking for everybody on the team, individuals, spouses, because Lord knows they have to hear it.
Yes. Well, and I will tell you, like, one of the things that I said is when I felt like it was going through a divorce and they got the kids, right?
It totally is.
Even with things going amicable and like it was both best for both parties, it was still really hard. And it is really, really hard when individuals are involved too, because especially, or at least I think, especially as second in command, I developed such a close relationship with my leadership team member, with those that report to me. And then, departing is really, really hard.
Especially because if we think specifically about the second in command role, what resonated with me about what you said is when I was second in command, I was the conduit for the team to our visionary. And when they lose that conduit, it's like the earth is shifting beneath their feet because they don't have often as direct a relationship as maybe they would like, because the visionary's attention span is like the size of a gnat typically. And so when you have that conduit, there's an efficient mechanism to get what you need. Mm-hmm. And when that second in command leaves, there's a hole in their world and their communication channels that's disorienting.
And that's why, I think, tying our whole conversation together, I think that's why right person, right seat is so important, right? Because when you have people entering and exiting the organization, every time someone leaves and someone onboards, it is a cultural change, whether it's intentional or not. Every person brings a piece of culture with them. And so it's really important. If you're hiring wrong person, hiring a wrong person is really, really hard because they can affect your culture so much. And wrong seat can be the same situation, right? If they're just not if they're a right person, wrong seat, then, maybe you can find a different place for them in the organization. But sometimes they do have to depart because there's not a right seat for them. And when those people are entering and exiting, it's just really, really hard.
Yeah. That one example you gave, I call it repotting. We're going to repot this person into the right pot with the right amount of sunlight. If we can. If we can't, we may need to free up their future because it's an energy equation. This is a drain on them to be in the wrong seat, because that's where imposter syndrome comes from, is being in the wrong seat and not bringing the value you want to bring. And so that's why I think getting better with people data, which feels elusive, but it is out there. Like PI is a 1 to 10 match scale. How naturally does this person fit into this seat? So you have the highest probability of getting them up to speed and to stellar performance quickly. And if as owners, we can't think about, or business leaders, we can't think about the energy drain on ourselves and our team members that we bring on, putting them in the right seat doesn't do them a service. And so being really thoughtful and calculated about that is a benefit all around. So it's a sandbox I've been playing in for 17 years. I'm not going anywhere. I love it. I love it. It's eternally engaging. There's constantly the same, but new problems. And the wins are personal.
Yeah.
And that to me, just continually engaging.
Agree. Friend, I knew we were going to have a fun conversation. Thank you so much for being on today's episode. I definitely think that there was a few nuggets in there that I'm like, oh, I need to remember that for myself as well. So thank you for sharing. Love to end our conversation with three rapid fire questions. As you know,
Okay.
honor, empower, inspire means a lot to me. So, who is a woman of a past generation that you would love to honor today?
So I would honor my grandmother, Virginia Yerxa. She was an absolute powerhouse, like manic energy. She was so fun. She was involved in everything, and she was so dedicated to the people around her. She was wonderful. She was a huge influence on my life. So she's the one that I seek to honor every day, honestly.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What about a woman of today that is in business, in leadership, doing the things today? Who would you want to empower, or who empowers you?
Okay, I have one. She started out as a nanny for me when my daughter was born. Her name is Hannah, and she is a delight. She is someone I have invested 10 years of my life in cheerleading, encouraging. Fun fact, my husband got a letter from Wells Fargo one day, and he's like, what is this co-sign on a loan thing? I went, oh yeah, I co-signed on a loan for Hannah to go study abroad because she's going to love it. And her mom wouldn't co-sign. Sorry about that. I should have told you.
Whoops.
She's doing a master's in occupational therapy and doing a bit of a career change right now, but she is an absolute gem, and I'm grateful to have her in my life.
Oh, I love that. How fun. And then last but not least is, who is a woman of a future generation that you would love to inspire?
All of them, Kristie. All of them. I'm on a school board, and my life is oriented around three things: strengths and engagement, entrepreneurship, and kids. I run a swim team for 100 kids. I'm on a school board and running for my third term, and I want all of them to know they can do more, be more. They don't have to be afraid of the comments that they get. I had a parent come to me with a 6-year-old girl, and she said, Mel, I got to show you this report card from Hazel's teacher because it was some kind of disparaging remarks. And I was like, Mel would look at this and say, these are leadership talents. And it just made me so happy that
I love it. These are leadership talents. Yes. What a great way to influence your own. So thank you so much again, Melissa. This has been
thank you for having me. You're doing so many fun things, and I'm thrilled to be in your stratosphere in any way because you are a gem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Meet us back next week where we'll be talking with ConvHERgo. Bill Poole is going to join us. You'll definitely want to hear that conversation. Melissa, thank you again. I appreciate having you, and we'll see y'all soon.